An 18-year-old girl, a satanic ritual, and a murder so brutal it left seasoned investigators speechless. Christa Pike's crime wasn't just a shocking act of violence, it was a window into a disturbed mind, shaped by jealousy, obsession, and a dark, twisted sense of purpose. On a chilly January night in 1995, Pike and her accomplices lured 19-year-old Colleen Summer to an isolated park in Knoxville, Tennessee. What followed was a nightmare of torture, fueled by rage and an unthinkable belief in sacrifice. Summer endured unimaginable pain for 45 harrowing minutes, leaving behind a crime scene so horrific that even experienced detectives struggled to process it. The gruesome details of the murder were only the beginning. Pike kept a piece of Summer's skull as a trophy, bragged about the killing, and showed no signs of remorse. Her actions raised chilling questions about how someone so young could be capable of such calculated evil. This is the story of Christa Pike, the youngest woman ever sentenced to death in the United States. A case that exposes not only the depths of human cruelty but also the societal failures that may have enabled it. On January 12, 1995, Christa Pike and her two accomplices, Tatterell Shipp and Shadala Peterson, carried out a gruesome plan that had been forming for days. Their target, 19-year-old Colleen Summer, a fellow Job Corps student at the Knoxville campus. Pike, driven by jealousy and paranoia, believed Summer was trying to steal her boyfriend, Tatterell. This belief, though unfounded, festered into an obsession. Pike's growing interest in satanic rituals added a sinister dimension to her rage. Under the pretense of clearing the air, Pike invited Summer to join her for a late-night walk. Summer, unaware of the danger ahead, agreed to go along. Tatterell and Shadala accompanied them as they left the dorms and headed to a secluded area of Tyson Park. Once they reached an isolated spot, the group's true intentions became horrifyingly clear. The attack began suddenly and viciously. Pike and Shipp restrained Summer as they took turns assaulting her. Shipp's involvement included both physical violence and an apparent role as Pike's accomplice in the macabre ritual. Pike's rage was relentless. She repeatedly stabbed Summer, inflicting over 300 wounds while taunting her. The most chilling moment came when Pike used a blade to carve a pentagram into Summer's chest, a clear indication that the murder had taken on a ritualistic dimension. Summer's cries for help fell on deaf ears. Shadala Peterson, who later claimed she didn't participate in the violence, stood by and watched as Pike and Shipp unleashed their fury. The ordeal stretched on for an agonizing 45 minutes, during which Summer begged for her life. In the final moments, Pike picked up a large rock and brought it down on Summer's skull, ending her suffering in a savage and symbolic act. What makes this crime even more chilling is what happened afterward. Pike reached down and retrieved a fragment of Summer's skull, pocketing it as a grotesque trophy. The fragment would later become a key piece of evidence in court, linking Pike directly to the crime. After the murder, Pike and her accomplices returned to their dorms as if nothing had happened. But Pike couldn't resist boasting about her actions, reportedly telling peers she just wouldn't die, while laughing. Her callousness and lack of remorse shocked even those who initially dismissed her as merely troubled. For investigators, the crime scene was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The overwhelming physical evidence, paired with Pike's chilling behavior, painted a picture of a young woman capable of unimaginable cruelty. Pike's motive, a volatile mix of jealousy, obsession, and twisted beliefs, remains one of the most disturbing aspects of the case, offering a harrowing glimpse into the depths of human depravity. Christa Pike's life was marked by chaos and dysfunction long before her name became synonymous with brutality. Born on March 10, 1976, in West Virginia, Pike grew up in an environment fraught with neglect and abuse. Her parents were largely absent, leading her to navigate a childhood defined by instability and a lack of nurturing care. By the time she was a teenager, Pike was already grappling with the scars of sexual abuse and the effects of substance exposure, both of which profoundly shaped her worldview. Her mother, a reported drug addict, offered little support or guidance, and Pike's father was largely out of the picture. This lack of a stable home life left Pike vulnerable to negative influences, pushing her further down a path of self-destruction. By her mid-teens, she had developed a rebellious streak, engaging in risky behaviors, dabbling in drugs, and forming toxic relationships. One of those relationships was with Tatterell Shipp, a fellow Job Corps student 2 years her junior. The two quickly bonded over their shared interest in the occult, and their connection spiraled into an unhealthy obsession. Shipp, like Pike, carried his own baggage of trauma, but instead of healing together, the pair fed each other's darker impulses. Pike's infatuation with Shipp grew to the point of possessiveness, and she became increasingly paranoid about anyone she perceived as a threat to their relationship. Pike's insecurities and deep-seated trauma began to manifest in troubling ways. Friends and acquaintances later described her as someone with a volatile temper, prone to violent outbursts and manipulative behavior. She reportedly had a fascination with dark rituals, often speaking of power through pain and sacrifice, beliefs that would later play a role in the horrific crimes she committed. At the Job Corps Center in Knoxville, Pike was surrounded by other troubled youth, many of whom had their own histories of trauma and hardship. Instead of finding solace or redemption in this environment, Pike's violent tendencies only intensified. She became fixated on Colleen Slemmer, a fellow student she falsely believed was flirting with Ship. This jealousy, combined with her unstable mental state and her twisted worldview, became the tipping point. Experts who analyze Pike's case have speculated that her traumatic upbringing, marked by neglect, abuse, and exposure to violence, contributed significantly to her capacity for cruelty. However, her lack of remorse and the calculated nature of her actions suggest that deeper psychological factors, including possible psychopathy, were also at play. Pike's life serves as a haunting example of how unresolved trauma can spiral into unimaginable violence. Christa Pike's actions following the murder of Colleen Slemmer were as chilling as the crime itself. Just hours after the brutal act, Pike couldn't resist bragging about what she had done. Back at the Job Corps dorms, she showed off the fragment of Slemmer's skull she had kept as a trophy, describing the murder to peers with disturbing enthusiasm. Her chilling words, "She just wouldn't die," and her laughter painted a picture of someone entirely devoid of remorse. It didn't take long for authorities to zero in on Pike and her accomplices. Investigators were tipped off by students who had heard Pike's confessions, and the evidence was damning. Pike's possession of the skull fragment directly linked her to the crime, and her detailed accounts of the murder provided law enforcement with a clear picture of what had transpired. Within days, Christa Pike, Tatterell Ship, and Shadala Peterson were arrested. While Peterson claimed she didn't participate in the violence, her failure to intervene made her complicit in the eyes of the law. Ship, who was 17 at the time, faced charges as a juvenile but received a life sentence due to his active role in the crime. Pike, however, faced a much harsher fate. During Pike's trial, the courtroom was gripped by the horrifying details of the murder and her lack of remorse. Witnesses recounted Pike's disturbing behavior, from her fascination with dark rituals to her casual boasting about the killing. Prosecutors argued that Pike was the mastermind behind the murder, driven by jealousy, obsession, and a twisted desire for control. Perhaps most shocking was Pike's demeanor during the trial. She appeared composed, even smug, as the prosecution laid out the gruesome evidence against her. At one point, she smirked when photographs of the crime scene were shown, a moment that would haunt jurors and spectators alike. The defense attempted to shift some of the blame onto Pike's troubled upbringing, arguing that years of abuse and neglect had left her emotionally scarred and mentally unstable. However, the jury was unmoved. The calculated nature of the crime, combined with Pike's chilling indifference, made her a clear candidate for the death penalty. In March 1996, Christa Pike was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death, making her the youngest woman on death row in the United States. For many, her case represented the ultimate failure of rehabilitation programs like Job Corps and the chilling reality of what unchecked trauma and rage could produce. Christa Pike's life on death row has been anything but quiet. Despite being confined to the Tennessee prison for women, Pike has continued to exhibit the violent and manipulative tendencies that defined her earlier years. Her behavior behind bars has only reinforced the perception of her as one of the most dangerous women in America. One of the most notable incidents occurred in 2001 when Pike attempted to kill fellow inmate Patricia Jones. The altercation reportedly stemmed from a personal dispute, but it quickly escalated into an attack that left Jones with serious injuries. Pike used a shoe to bludgeon Jones, demonstrating the same level of brutality that had marked her original crime. This act not only added to her notoriety but also confirmed her propensity for violence even in a controlled environment. Pike's manipulative nature also became evident in her dealings with prison staff and other inmates. In 2012, authorities uncovered a chilling escape plot involving Pike, a prison guard, and an outside accomplice. The plan was elaborate. The guard, seduced and manipulated by Pike, was set to help her escape with the aid of a man on the outside. The plot was foiled before it could be carried out, but it underscored Pike's ability to exploit others for her own benefit. Prison officials have described Pike as calculating and dangerous, someone who thrives on exerting control over those around her. Her escape attempt not only led to increased security measures but also highlighted the ongoing challenges of managing inmates like Pike. Beyond her acts of violence and manipulation, Pike has shown little remorse for her actions. In interviews and appeals, she has maintained her innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against her. Her lack of accountability has only deepened public fascination with her case, turning her into a figure of both infamy and psychological study. Life on death row for Pike has been marked by isolation and the looming reality of her sentence. Yet, her actions within prison walls suggest that her dangerous tendencies remain as potent as ever. Pike's case serves as a grim reminder of how even the most secure environments can struggle to contain individuals with her capacity for violence and manipulation. Christa Pike's case remains one of the most haunting in American criminal history, not only for the sheer brutality of the crime but also for the questions it raises about justice, rehabilitation, and the human capacity for evil. Decades after the murder of Colleen Summer, Pike's story continues to fascinate, horrify, and provoke debate. For the family of Colleen Summer, the impact of Pike's actions has been a lifelong burden. Colleen's mother, May Martinez, has spoken publicly about the immense pain of losing her daughter in such a violent way. She has also become an advocate for justice, ensuring that Colleen's memory is not overshadowed by the infamy of her killer. May's resilience serves as a reminder of the lasting effects violent crimes have on victims' families. In the years following her conviction, Pike's appeals have been consistently denied. Legal experts and psychologists often point to her lack of remorse and continued violent behavior as indicators of her unsuitability for rehabilitation. While some argue that her death sentence reflects the severity of her crime, others see it as a failure of a system that couldn't address the root causes of her violence before it was too late. The public and media have turned Pike into an infamous figure, often comparing her to fictional villains due to her charm and brutality. Documentaries, podcasts, and online discussions dissect her case, exploring the psychological and social factors that contributed to her descent into violence. Pike's story has also become a case study for criminologists examining the effects of childhood trauma and the pathways to psychopathy. At the core of this case is a disturbing question: could Christa Pike's violent tendencies have been prevented? Her childhood was riddled with red flags, abuse, neglect, and exposure to harmful influences. Yet, despite these warning signs, she fell through the cracks, becoming not just a victim of her circumstances but also a perpetrator of unimaginable cruelty. Ultimately, Pike's legacy is a stark reminder of the dangers posed by unresolved trauma, unchecked rage, and the societal systems that failed to intervene in time. While her crimes will forever be etched in history, so too will the lessons learned from her story about the complexity of human behavior and the consequences of neglecting those most in need. As Pike awaits the final resolution of her sentence, her case continues to challenge society's understanding of justice, mercy, and the human condition. Hey everyone! I hope this video brought you something valuable or insightful. Here on our channel, we've got fresh content every single day, always made with care to keep you informed and entertained. If you enjoyed it, I just ask for a quick favor: hit that subscribe button, drop a like to show your support, and leave your suggestions in the comments. We love hearing your ideas and creating the content you want to see. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.